From San Antonio, Texas, home of the Alamo, the Riverwalk, and the World Heritage San Antonio Missions, this is the ExitMap Podcast, hosted by John F. Dini, the exit planning coach. Designed to help advisors who work with business owners, John talks with top professionals in the exit planning field about best practices, marketing tips, and how to be more effective when working with owners. Now, here's John F. Dini.
Welcome to today's edition of the ExitMap Podcast, hosted by the Exit Planning Coach. That's me, John F. Dini. My guest today is Chris Snider, the CEO of the Exit Planning Institute. Chris is the author of Walking to Destiny. He is the person who created the value acceleration methodology, which is why he's on our founder series here, because it has become the preeminent planning process for owners that want to transition in the United States. Chris, welcome. I'm very excited to have you on board.
Thanks, Jared.
Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, me too.
So let's go way back. What did you do in business before you were renowned as the creator of the value acceleration methodology?
Well, it hit me, recently that I've been working now or out of school, out of college for over 40 years, right? So my experience goes, way back to 1982 when I graduated John Carroll. And my first job was an auditor for the Sherwin-Williams Company. And immediately I was thrust into, looking at standard operating procedures and looking at processes within a company and making recommendations on how to improve those processes. And that's kind of how my career evolved over 40 years, right? Starting with that audit, and then for Sherwin-Williams, I was doing system integration work, re-engineering our processes at our factories and distribution centers and headquarters. Then I moved into the consulting space with Price Waterhouse. That was really helpful because they took, they applied like structured process and methodology, which I learned from them. And then I began to apply all of the stuff that I learned in different companies I went into after that. Third-party logistics was very hot back in the late 90s. We would go into companies and kind of re-engineer their processes and stuff like that. And then kind of my big break came when I got an opportunity to work for my first privately held business in 1997. Up to that point, I had been all in big corporate,
Yeah,
and
I know. We had a client who was getting an offer from PwC to buy his company to add it to their consulting arm, and he said, "Who's your ideal client?" And they said the Fortune 50. And he said, "Oh, well, I guess everybody would like to work with the Fortune 50." And they said, "Oh, no, we only work with the Fortune 50.
That's right. That's right. I mean, it's big. So one of my challenges was, could I take what I had learned in these big companies and engineer it to work in smaller, privately held businesses? And so that's why I say sort of the value accelerations kind of was evolving at that time, where I was trying to apply these re-engineering concepts into different companies I was with, some public, some private. But really working with Flexalloy was a real eye-opener for me, because it was the first time I was brought in to help basically prepare a company for sale. And we took that company from roughly 97 million to over 250 million in 3 years.
Wow.
To a large multinational. And once I got through with that, the question in my mind kept going like, well, could I take what I had learned at, say, Price Waterhouse and Sherwin-Williams, and apply that in smaller, and Flexalloy, which, still $250 million companies, still a pretty big company.
Yeah, that's not mainstream.
Could I engineer that to work in $5 million companies and $10 million companies? So I took on a couple of smaller assignments with small companies. One was doing about 4.5 million when I joined it and losing probably about 600,000. 3 years later, we were doing 12.2 million and making about $2 million.
Wow.
Right? And then I joined another small business, which was doing like maybe, I don't know, $2 or $3 million. We doubled that company in 2 years. And I began to think, I think I've got a process here that really works to help companies grow and positioned to sell. And that's when I decided to go off on my own and launch my own practice.
And at what point how long did you practice before you found the Exit Planning Institute?
Well, I launched my practice 2006, and in 2008, and it was based on a model which I called BIGS: buy, improve, grow, sell. So those were the 4 pillars. So I was looking as I was trying to take like a CEO or owner sort of perspective on a business, not just a functional perspective. So when you look at the overall business, right, how am I going to grow the value of this business? And I started out doing improve, grow was really my specialty because I had been with a lot of growth companies and a lot of success there. Then I thought, a lot of small businesses, they think organically when you talk about growth. They don't think about growing through acquisition. I added the B, the B in the BIGS, the buy side to that. And then I saw what the investment bankers were making on the back end. And I thought, well, heck, I'm not going to do all this improvement and then not participate on the back end. So I added the other bookends: buy, improve, grow, sell. And so I did that for a couple of years, but it was a integrated approach as we teach today. I got an email from a friend in Arizona, and he had gotten emailed by EPI, which was just starting back then. And he said, this might be a program that you might be interested in. It sounds a lot like what you're trying to do. And I was curious. And so I signed up for the CEPA program in 2008. I was in the 3rd class. I was one of the first 100 CEPAs across the country.
I was going to say, you told me you had a 2-digit CEPA number?
Yeah, 93.
Yeah.
93.
Yeah, I have a 3-digit, but way past 93.
Yeah. And I came out of it, pretty motivated and inspired. I was shocked to learn that only 20 to 30% of business owners successfully exit their businesses, and unlock their wealth. That just kind of blew me away. And then I looked at the demographics of the marketplace with all the boomers. The focus back then was on the boomers. They own about 2/3 of the privately held businesses back then. And I thought, this is going to be a tragedy if we can't come up with some solution to improve these success rates. This is going to be a tragedy. And so I looked at my methodology that I was using with my clients, and it was almost the opposite of what we were seeing in the marketplace. So I would say my clients were 70 to 80 to 90% of them were successful, where in the marketplace, 70 to 80% were not successful.
Right.
And I began to think well, maybe I could leverage my methodology, commercialize it, and begin to share it with the, other professionals in the industry. And that's kind of how I got, into the methodology. So I commercialized value acceleration. Pete and Rich put me on the board in 2010. 2011, I founded the first chapter and launched the first national conference for exit planning professionals. And then in 2012, Pete approached me to see if I'd be interested in buying EPI.
So Pete approached you. You didn't do a takeover?
No, I think, what happens is, Pete was in the M&A space and so was Rich.
Right.
They were equal partners. And that was their primary business, and exit planning was sort of a side thing, but it really, it didn't have a lot of energy behind it. And so I think Pete was looking for somebody to take over that had the energy and the passion for it. And so, took 3 attempts, but eventually on the 3rd attempt, I was able to acquire it. And then the plan was to, integrate the methodology, re-engineer the CEPA program, and really build out a community of professional advisors who focus on growth and unlocking wealth.
Now, was EPI using the value acceleration methodology before you bought it?
No, and that's one of the things I think that's really different today as the industry has matured versus when I went through it, believe it or not, 17 years ago.
Yeah.
That's crazy to think that that's 17 years ago. Back then, and in some cases still today, the focus is all on the end. You kind of pick an exit option and then you work backwards to figure out, how to engineer your business to be able to execute that particular option whenever that day comes. And what I was finding is that process wasn't working very well, because when you approach a business owner and you're talking about something that's maybe 5 years or 10 years down, they're not interested. They're just, they're focusing on today. What do I have to do today? And so I felt like what we had to do is we had to re-engineer the exit planning paradigm into something that we do present tense in our businesses versus something we do when we're, quote, ready to exit. Because if you wait, as you know,
Sure.
if you wait, it's usually too late. You're not going to maximize value or maximize net proceeds if you wait. So you have to get started really early. And so I thought the only way I'm going to get business owners to really do this is to get them to integrate it into the way they run their businesses every day today, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is it makes sense too, because as you know, exit planning isn't something where you just benefit down the road when you exit the business. If you do exit planning, at least using value acceleration, you're going to see results in 90 days. And that's what business,
Yeah.
when you can lock in the business owner and they're seeing results, within 90 days, and they're improving their business and their growth today, they're much more inclined to, adopt your philosophy as a long-term strategy to position the business for an ultimate exit.
Yeah, I tell prospective clients and my existing clients that, once you have an exit mindset, that I'm building this, but it's a strategic plan with a date. I mean, that's basically what an exit plan is, right? And, it changes your decisions. If you're going to make a key hire, is it going to be a second in command that will be happy to work for a new owner? Or are you hiring a successor in training that needs to duplicate your skills? It changes every decision you make going down the road if you know where you want to wind up.
Right. If you're, we are the paradigm, the way we address it is focusing on value, not income.
Right.
Income is a result of something else that you're doing. Value is a more encompassing goal, right? Because why are you doing all this stuff? It's to drive transferable value that someday you can monetize.
Right.
And the income is great, but the real value is when you unlock the wealth. That's usually 4 to 5 times whatever your income is, maybe even 10 times what your income is.
Mm-hmm.
That's locked in there, that you can unleash that wealth when that time comes. So you could still make a lot of money today by improving your business performance. But the real kicker is when you go to transfer that asset and you monetize the value that you built into it. So it requires you to shift your thinking into value versus income. And as you know, 80% of value is tied to what we call the intangible capitals, the 4 C's.
Right.
And it happens that the 4 C's are the things that actually drive income as well.
Yeah.
So why not just focus on that?
A nice coincidence there.
Forget the income is something that you get when you manage your 4 C's well. And it's also managing your 4 C's well also positions you to be able to transfer that intellectual property to a future owner,
Right.
And get 5 to 10 times whatever that income is.
Right. Going to take a quick break to pay for the podcast. We'll be back in just 1 minute. And because I've got a couple questions about, first about the deal. So be right back.
The fastest way to lose a client is to treat the exit as the finish line. The surest way to keep one? Make what's next part of the plan long before any transaction. ExitMap changes everything and turns next step planning into your strongest retention tool. ExitMap is the only structured discovery system built to be the first step in every advisory relationship. The 5-meeting process helps advisors guide owners through the essentials of successful transition planning: financial readiness, business readiness, and personal readiness. so they gain real clarity about what life looks like after the business. You guide the process by facilitating deeper conversations. They own the plan by discovering their own priorities and defining what success truly looks like. The result? A documented set of goals, a personal vision, and a prioritized action plan. Built by the client, giving them clarity about their future and giving you a roadmap for supporting it. ExitMap. You guide it, they own it. Take a test drive at exitmap.com.
We're back with Chris Snider, the CEO of the Exit Planning Institute and the creator of the Value Acceleration Methodology, and the author of Walking to Destiny, now in its second edition.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got one of my books is in a second edition. I hated the rewrite. I will never do that again. I don't know
It
about
was
you.
actually harder. I thought
Yeah.
it was easier, but it was actually twice as hard to do the second edition as it was the first.
Yeah. It's we had talked offline, and one of the stories that we discussed, or one of the things that we discussed that I really liked, was you talked about the deal, and it took a couple tries. Now, any of us that have been through the transition of a company, you know, the axiom is every deal dies 5 deaths before it actually gets closed. And you had a few of those too. So to encourage other people who are going through that process, you didn't just sit down with Pete and Rich and say, hey, let's do this, and it was fine. So can you tell that story, please, about what it took to buy the EPI?
It probably took 12 to 18 months before we finally got a deal done. The first time Pete approached me, there were going to be 4 partners. And Pete was going to stay in. Pete was half of EPI at that time. He was going to leave half of that in, so he'd be a quarter partner. And then there were 3 other partners. And when I went back to the other 2 partners and said, we need to come up with the money to buy Rich out and half of Pete, they were like, well, I'm not coming up with any money. And I'm like, well, how can you justify a quarter of the business if you're not coming up with, a quarter of the money? I said, that doesn't make any sense to me. And so that deal just fell apart. And then people might remember, if they go back long enough, Dennis Roberts, who was an M&A advisor, really well-regarded M&A advisor, and Parnell from NACVA, they decided to take a run at EPI, called me up, and asked me if I'd be interested in getting together in the partnership. And I said, yeah, absolutely. But I said to them, I've never met you guys, so shouldn't we at least meet before we're going to become partners, And one thing led to another, and that particular partnership fell apart. And then Rich called me up and said, hey, that deal is falling apart too. And I just finally said, you know what, Rich, I can get this thing done in 60 days, and I can just do it on my own. I don't need any help. And so Rich said, great, if you could put the deal together. So we did. My son, Scott, who a lot of people know, he and I drove up to Chicago. We sat in a hotel room for a day, and we just hammered out a deal with Rich. And, pretty much within the 60 days, that deal got done.
Now, Scott's participation, he had a company that he sold. Did he do that before, or did he sell it to do the EPI deal with you?
That was years before.
Oh, okay.
He had his first company, started his first company at 17. And then Aspire Management, my consulting company, was really taking off. And one of the things I said to Scott is, fall in love with business. Don't necessarily fall in love with a business.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And what I was hoping for Scott is I wanted to give him a broader view of other companies that were out in the market, not just his company. So I asked him to actually sell his company and join mine. And that was a tough nut. And if people have interviewed him about it, it was really that was his first experience of owner's remorse. That was, he really loved what he did. But really in the big picture of things, coming into Aspire and learning things from the grassroots, doing recasted financial statements, dialing for dollars, handling deals and all that kind of stuff. That was a great experience for him, and he got exposure to a lot of different companies. And so after we purchased EPI, I kept the current management team in place for about a year and a half. And then I went to Scott and I said, we need to bring this business. It was located in Chicago. We need to bring it to Cleveland so we can be closer to it. And I want you to manage it. And he's like, I don't know anything about exit planning. What do you like? I said, well, you know more than you think, But besides that, the family has made an investment into this business. I don't have time to run it. I need someone I trust running that business. And if you don't want to do it for any other reason, you have to do it for the family, And I remember that conversation was in the hallway of my home. And,
You're not even Italian.
Huh?
You're not even Italian.
I know. I'm Irish. It's close enough. He reluctantly agreed to do that. When I told him, I said, you got to do it for 2 years. And after 2 years, if you don't want to do this anymore, I'll get somebody else to run it, or I'll sell it, or, we'll figure out what to do. But I need you to commit to it for 2 years. After 2 years, I went up to him. I said, what do you think? When you want to stick? He's like, I actually kind of love this stuff. And so he stuck with it ever since.
Yeah, it's done a fairly decent job too.
He's done an outstanding.
I know.
The best thing I did is make him president of the company.
I was trying to be funny. I wasn't really. Yeah, because I mean, how many members have how many CEPAs do we have? People that have been
We're
through the program?
8,400 now.
8,400.
We're approaching 10,000. We'll cross 10,000 shortly.
Yeah.
Our goal is to be at 18,000 by 2028.
Wow. That would be steady growth, but not accelerating growth.
Well, it would be basically doubling our membership in 3 years.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that easily because you're doing what? No, I mean, I can see it easily. I didn't mean I could do it. That's a completely different thing. Yeah.
I mean, EPI only had 180 members when I bought it, so I feel pretty good about the progress we've made.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Think of me as what was that old? I think it was an American Express commercial where the consultant gives the plan to the owner, and the owner says, "Let's go do it," and they go, "No, wait a minute, we're consultants. We don't actually do anything."
I didn't say I could do it.
Yeah,
I could think about it. I could. Yeah. It's execution is the name of the game, right? Getting things done.
So that leads to our wind up here. 2 questions. First, EPI at 18,000 CEPAs in the world, or let's say 20,000. Let's just, you need a stretch goal. But what does that look like? Is it still just the not just, I don't mean that to be demeaning, but is it still only the educational company, or does EPI start doing other things as well?
Well, one of the things we've developed is something called EPI Academy, which I think has a lot of potential. So what happens is the CEPA program is 17 modules over the course of a week, right? Proctored exam at the end of that. So the goal of CEPA is really to give everybody the holistic view of what exit planning entails, right? Because that's one of our challenges, right? How do we take all these disparate advisors and get them working together collaboratively for one common purpose, which is to help the business owner, right? And so it's very broad, but it's not deep. So the idea behind Academy, and what a lot of our members have asked for, is they want to go deeper.
Yes.
So what we're doing is building out verticals, if you think of it that way, where you go through some value enhancement or some value advisor type modules, but now I want to learn more about how to be a value advisor. The Academy provides supplemental courses that allows you to dive deeper. The other thing we've done is we've initiated a program called Beyond CEPA, which is like a 2-year program for CEPAs. We already have like 120-day playbook. Like, what do you do in the first 120 days? Right. But Beyond CEPA goes out like 2 years and says, look, we're going to provide support for you for 2 years to really help you integrate the concepts and tools of value acceleration into your practice, depending on what role you want to play. So I think those are two, additional product service opportunities. And there's some new markets that we're looking at getting into as well.
And there's, well, I think it's only in the last year you've done the pathway. You started with the pathways, right?
Yeah.
Path 1, 2, and 3 to
Yeah.
subdivide what people want out of the CEPA as they
Yeah.
go
So we could
forward.
tailor
Yeah.
a program. Say if you're a financial advisor, we could tailor a program of integrating the methodology into your practice over that 2-year period, right? So that just, I think, helps the community get better results, and shortens the learning curve. Because I mean, it's one thing to take the course; it's
Yeah.
another thing after the course to integrate the concepts into your brand or do some rebranding, if that's necessary.
Yeah. We talk to lots of CEPAs and we do hear, I'm going to get started. I'm about to get started. I'm not sure how to get started. So obviously that we'll call it the post-education period is really necessary. Um, last question to wind it up. Where do you fit in that company?
Where do I fit?
Yeah. What are you going to be doing in when you have 18 or 20,000 CEPAs out there?
Sitting on a beach, I hope. No, my role has evolved over the last couple of years, to be maybe strategic coach is a good way to describe what my role is. So Scott was named president 2021. We
Right.
have, as you know, we have a stellar executive team.
Hmm.
And that team's been working together now for 5 to 7 years, somewhere in that range. And they're running, I'm not involved in the day-to-day aspects of the business at all anymore. So I'm winding down, still play the role as an ambassador for the industry and for the company. I'm still speaking. I'm still head of faculty, doing those things. But even that is starting to transition as well. We created something called the Thought Leadership Council
Hmm.
over the last year. This is a group of 6 CEPAs who are real good examples of what a CEPA should be. And they're all accomplished in their own right. And they're now taking over stewardship of the methodology, leadership within the industry, and even providing, leadership to our executive team, guidance to our executive team. So my role will continue as it has over the last, 5+ years, become smaller. I'd still like to be doing speaking, still be sitting on the board, but probably a lot less active in the business in the next 3 to 5 years than even I am today. And the TLC and board and the executive team, will be really driving the direction of the company long term.
Right. It sounds like exit by choice whenever you feel like it, which would be the ideal
Isn't that
for
what
any business owner. Yeah.
isn't that what we're all trying to do? It's
We're
like,
all trying to
you
do
know,
it. You know,
I mean,
you could,
that's exactly what I tell business. When I go in, I don't really talk about exit so much. I talk about making them independent of the business,
right.
financially, personally, and from a business standpoint. And when you become independent of the business, you have lots of options.
Sure.
You can stay
Sure.
involved. You can decide how much you want to be involved, but the business doesn't really. Tell them all the time, when a business doesn't need you, that's when it's the most valuable.
Yeah.
So we're
Well,
trying to practice what we preach here.
yeah, no, as you know, our assessment starts out with 2 questions. When do you want to step back from the day to day, and when do you want to be gone? Because two very different deadlines. And what I tell my clients is, if we can accomplish the first one, the second one gets a lot more flexible.
Yeah, and it's like it's some business owner, a lot of business owners actually don't want to totally step out. They still want a board like or coaching role. They just don't want the grind of the everyday
Right.
business, and
Right.
that's where I'm at now. And it's a nice place to be, And
Good.
but you have to have a good team. You have
Yeah.
to have a good team. You have to have a good governance model for that to really work. So,
Yeah. Well, congratulations. You have done a hell of a job.
thank you.
Yeah.
It's been a tough road. Let me tell
Okay.
you, a lot of sweat.
Yeah. Yeah. We've talked about that too, about supporting through the growth stage, but maybe that's for another day. Chris, it's been a joy. Really enjoyed talking to you. This has been a pleasure. And of course, you will continue to see me every
You
spring.
will. Yeah, thanks for all your support over the years. Our partnership's really it's been a good partnership.
Great. Well, I've really enjoyed it and looking forward to continuing.
I'll see you at the summit, huh?
Okay. You will.
All right.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Chris. Have a great one.
Bye-bye.